Last year in 2023, Free League Publishing released Dragonbane, which is a high fantasy tabletop role-playing game that's inspired by the popular Swedish version in the 1980s called Drakar och Demoner, which translates to Dragons and Demons. Now, I've actually been playing this game for a while now with a group of friends of mine in my local gaming store, and I absolutely love it. And I made a video about why I think people should check this out, especially if you're new to the world of tabletop role-playing games, but a game like Dungeons & Dragons might be intimidating for you. Or maybe you played that for a long time, but you're looking for a new kind of fantasy-based role-playing game that is familiar and similar to that world of Dungeons & Dragons. So I'll go ahead and put a link in the video here for you to watch in case you're interested. But the reason for this video is that Free League Publishing is actually releasing their Bestiary for Dragonbane that will come out at the end of this month. And I was lucky enough that they sent me a PDF version of this book. So I want to give you all a sneak peek into the kinds of creatures and monsters that we might be seeing in future campaigns of Dragonbane. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the Bestiary that'll be coming out. And right off the bat, I have to say that one of the things I love about Dragonbane is the aesthetics that they create in their artwork. And this book is no different. It still has that same sort of visual style that you're familiar with if you played Dragonbane from the starter kit, or if you have the quick start guide or the adventures or rule book. But they capture it in the same similar style that really screams out to you that this is a fantasy-based game. And I just absolutely love it. It's a really cool aesthetic that I haven't seen a whole lot of other people been able to capture as well as Free League Publishing. I'm not entirely sure what this monster is on the front of the book. At first I thought it was dragon because of, the namesake Dragonbane, but it doesn't have wings. It looks more like a basilisk kind of monster. So I love the fact that they actually capture you in with a look that looks like a dragon, but the more you look at it, the more you realize that this is probably a different kind of creature altogether. But I absolutely love how this is a really ferocious monster, and the fighter there just looks like he is completely unfazed by this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the contents of this book. One of the things I absolutely love what Free League Publishing did here that I'm going to point out is that from Dungeons & Dragons, you have the monster manual that kind of gives you a whole list of monsters you can choose from, and they organize it just alphabetically, which is fine and it's good. But what I love about this is that they actually group it into types of creatures that you can pull into your game. So we have NIGHTKINs, which, if you think about this, are probably going to be creatures that really is more prevalent at night and don't come out during the day that often. Rarekin, insectoids, trolls, giants, beasts, undead, dragons, and demons. And then we get into the preface. And what I love about this is that Free League Publishing approached this as this is a document or a book that actually lives in the world. It's not about the world from a player point of view, but it is a book that lives in the world from a character's point of view. So when you read through the preface, you find out that this is actually being told from the point of view of Theodora Sneezewort, who is a halfling that is writing a book about all the creatures that they have encountered in their world of Dragonbane. And so I absolutely love how they kind of make you read this in immersive style. So anytime that a publisher is trying to get you to really just dive into the world and live and breathe it as much as possible, I'm absolutely all for. And so I love that they took this approach here. But the other thing in the preface that I really got excited about is that when you read it is in the using this book section here in the playable kin, they're actually introducing 9 new character kins that you can play as part of your character. So before, we have 6 that you could choose from, which is from the list here on the right. From the D20, you can choose human, halfling, dwarf, elf, mallard, or wolfkin. But then the next list of kins are all completely new. We have orc, ogre, goblin, hobgoblin, frog people, Karkian, cat people, lizard people, and satyr. So this is actually really exciting that you get more choices of kins that you can play as part of your character. But you can also use these as, different kinds of creatures and monsters in your campaign as well too. So as we go through this, I'm not going to go through every creature that's in here. I'm going to probably pick one from all of these different sections just to kind of give you a sneak peek into what you can expect. But let's go ahead and start off with NIGHTKIN. and take a look here. So first of all, every section or every chapter, I guess, is going to have this sort of really cool artwork that really emulates, you know, the world of Dragonbane. I love how this monster is throwing a fighter like in midair across the hill. So I love that they're capturing this. And again, the aesthetics are just really, really fantastic. But every chapter is kind of give you a little bit of an insight into, you know, what the creatures, you know, kind of feel or presence is in the game as well too. So jumping into NIGHTKIN, let's go ahead and take a look at Goblin, which I know is very familiar and is a very common one in different games, but I read through this one ahead of time. I didn't do that for all the monsters, but I did for this one. And this actually is something that I think I really want to share with you all because it included something in here that's really funny that I just can't get over. So let's go ahead and jump into Goblin. And as we go through this, you're going to notice that every creature is going to kind of follow this same kind of pattern or outline that Free League Publishing has kind of set up here. So it's going to start off with a quote from a character that lives in the world of Dragonbane that tells you a little bit about their experience or their viewpoint of that particular creature, and then it's going to give like a short paragraph about that creature from the point of view of the writer of the book, Theodorus Sneezewort, and then they'll give you a stat block of some kind. Now the playable kins will have a little bit more details, but if it's not a playable kin, then it's going to be, you know, a little bit more basic. That gives you, you know, just the information you need in order to play this in a encounter or combat inside the game. Then in addition to that, they're going to give you a random encounter example that you can use in your game. So if you want to use this creature, but you're having a hard time figuring out like how to introduce that into your adventure, they give you a paragraph that you can use as kind of like a starting point for writing that story. And then they also have what's called an adventure seed, where that's more of like creating a whole campaign around this creature that could be the big bad at the end of the adventure. So random encounter is like how you can pull in a combat into any sort of game that you want. Adventure seed is how you create an entire adventure campaign around that monster. So looking at the Goblin here, again, I love the aesthetics. I love the artwork. It's very consistent across the entire, not just book, but the entire world of Dragonbane. And so it has that same kind of look here. Apparently, there are two kinds of goblins that you can play or, you know, have in your adventures. There's one that's called the Scout and one that's called the Warrior, and obviously they have different kinds of attributes. So a Scout is going to have like leather armor, whereas a Warrior is going to have something that's called studded leather that gives you +2 armor, whereas the Scout's leather is going to be +1. The hit points and willpower, hit points are different, willpower is about the same, but their skills and typical weapons are going to be different as well too. So if you're looking for a kin, but you're wanting to get an idea of the kind of kin or the kind of character that you might want to play, it gives you two that you can choose from here. So these are kind of like, I guess, I wouldn't call it subkins necessarily because these aren't like races necessarily, but these are maybe like different kinds of styles of play that you can choose from here. And so you can use that as your starting stat block. And again, it gives you an ability, just like all the other kins in the game that's playable. It gives you an ability that you can use. So for this creature, Goblin, they are resilient. So you can use 1 willpower point to allow a creature capable of withstanding all kinds of hardships. By activating this ability, goblins get a boon on Constitution roll for resisting poison or disease, which is on pages 52 and 53 in the rulebook, or they can make camp without rolling bushcraft. So that's actually really cool too. So if you don't want to be rolling every single time you have to make camp and you have a goblin character, you can actually just go ahead and just be able to do that without having to roll. In addition, goblins can always eat raw food without falling ill, which actually, this is interesting. No willpower is required for that. So that's just something that kind of comes along with being part of this race or this kin. I'm not sure how I feel about having a character that can just eat raw food like that. But again, this is really cool because they're giving you an ability that is specific to that kin that you can use if you're playing it. One thing that I want to point out here is, again, there's the random encounter, and the venture seed. The random encounter here, I absolutely was dying laughing because I think the writers here had a great sense of humor when they wrote this, and I just appreciate when they can have fun with something that they're putting out, and this is an example of that. So reading the random encounter here, let me go ahead and zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. A badly wounded woman comes staggering towards the player characters but collapses before reaching them. If someone hurries, she has the time to whisper a few words before she dies. Follow the blood trail. Save my darling before they eat him with mustard. Like, with mustard just sounds like it's such an abomination for that woman. She's like, I can't believe they're going to eat him with mustard. If it's ketchup, it's okay, but mustard, we can't allow that to happen. Like, that's just a weird, choice of words for someone who's dying that's trying to save their husband, right? Anyone who succeeds with a spot hidden or hunting and fishing roll can follow the blood trail deep into the wilderness for a clearing where a handful of cheerful goblins, 2 scouts and 3 warriors, have lit a fire and set up a roasting spit. Lying on the ground is the intended meal, a tied up man. So, I zoomed out a little too much there, so let me go ahead and go back there. Yeah, so again, that's an example of a random encounter where, that could fit into any sort of adventure that if you want this to be just something that just randomly happens while they're on their way to accomplishing their quest or anything like that, that's a really easy way to be able to insert that in essentially anywhere. The adventure seed, and I read this as an example. I'm not going to do this for every kin, but I just want you to get a feel for this here. For the adventure seed, this is what they wrote for the Goblin. From the darkest depths of a vast forest, small bands of goblins are setting off on raids. Successfully robbing merchants, priests, peasants, and nobles has made them bolder. So far, they have not killed anyone who put their hands in the air, but several guards have lost their lives trying to stop them. It is Gutsy herself who is behind the attacks. In the autumn of her life, her mind is stuck in the memories of being betrayed and forced to hide in the woods with her companions, like rats in filthy holes. Now, she intends to take what she was once promised by Visimir. Any gold the goblins scrape together is used to buy food, weapons, and equipment for the growing army. Someone must stop Gutsy before her goblins grow so strong that they pose a real threat to everyone in the area. So this is actually something where it could be an entire campaign centered around this, or I can see this being like a quest that you could probably use as well too. So random encounter is smaller. Adventure Seed can be something at the level of a quest or in a whole campaign if you want to go that route as well too. So that's what you get a sense for every creature and monster that they have in here. And as I mentioned before, I'm not going to go through all of the creatures in here because I just want to do a sneak peek. I don't want to, spoil, ruin everything in here for you all, but I do want to get you a sense of what's in here and what might get you excited for this. So that is NIGHTKIN. Let's look at something from Rarekin here. So again, Rarekin has that same sort of aesthetics and setup. This kind of gives you a sense of what you might be expecting here. And let's go ahead and let's do Frog People because I know my game master is really excited about this. This is a playable kin that has the ability to leap. Let me go ahead and zoom in here and read through this. So this actually costs 3 willpower points, which is a lot for a character in Dragonbane. Usually I see like 1 or 2. 3 is a lot, but that probably means that it's actually a pretty big deal and pretty powerful. So Frog People can activate this ability to jump as far as their movement rating horizontally or up to half their movement rating vertically. No acrobatics roll is required, so that's pretty cool. The jump can end with a melee attack, which is made with a boon. So that's actually pretty cool. With it being 3 willpower points, it's actually pretty interesting because I don't know, like, I can't remember all the different kinds of abilities are out there, like how on par that is with some of those. That doesn't seem like it would be worth 3. I think it would be worth 3 if it gives you like a plus, 5 movement or something like that. I mean, they already have plus 12. So I could see it being something where they can maybe use it and get a little bit more distance to do that. But otherwise, I would have to figure out like why leaping would be such a huge deal unless you want to be able to like leap over someone or be able to leap, high. I guess, the benefit of this is that they don't have to worry about acrobatics necessarily. I do think that their skill is pretty high in acrobatics already. Yeah, so for Hunter and Shaman, it's pretty high. So it's got kind of curious that they've selected 3 for this. So again, I've only played 1 character so far, so I don't know what the sense is for some of the other kinds of kins and how this is on par with that. But I haven't really seen Frog People a whole lot in other games as well, too. So I know they're out there, just it's not a very common one. And like I said, my game master is really excited about this. So this is actually pretty cool. Again, the artwork is fantastic. It is kind of creepy of seeing a frog eat a fish like this, but I love it though. It kind of gives that really cool menacing look if you're looking for a villain type of creature that you're going for. So you got Hunter as an option and a Shaman, which I am assuming, looking at skills being animism, this is going to be like a spellcaster kind of role. So this is really cool to look at. So that is Rarekin. Let's go ahead and take a look at Insectoids. The one I want to check out here is we got Ant People, Beetle Kin, and Spider Kin. Let's take a look at Beetle Kin here. So this is the first one that we're going to see that is not a playable kin. So now you're going to see the difference in the layout of the book now that we're going into creatures and monsters that you can't play as a player. So it still has that, you know, opening paragraph or opening sentence of a character that explains, you know, their what their, I guess, mindset is of that particular kin. And then you got the paragraph from Theodorus Neesward that kind of explains, you know, who they are, what they're like as a kin and all that. And still has random encounter and venture seed. But one of the differences you see here is the stat block just kind of tells you ferocity, which, again, I'm only played this as a player, not as a GM, so I'm assuming that ferocity probably has some sort of specific meaning behind it, and I don't know what it is for the time being right now. But it gives you, you know, the size, the movement, the armor, and the hit points. And then I guess this is an ability that they have for Beetle Kin. It's Digger, which is the digging ability of the Beetle Kin means that they are always counted as having a shovel, which halves the time spent digging. Okay, so that's really interesting. But then what's different about this that's not part of the playable kin, which makes sense, is that it has a list of monster attacks. And then you can use a D6 to determine what kind of attack that they're going to have. And so there is the list of 6 different kinds of attacks for Beetle Kin here. So we got Clobbering Blow, which means that they can slam an opponent with a rock hard claw. The victim suffers D10 bludgeoning damage. That is huge. Double Strike. The creature lunges at opponent with both its claws. The victim is hit by 2 attacks, each inflicting D8 slashing damage. So what's already interesting here is that I know as a character, if I'm making an attack, there's a die that tells me what to roll for determining if I'm successful in my hit. I'm not seeing that here, so I'm kind of curious to see how they determine that. Maybe, you know, the game master just says that they, you know, they meet that every single time, or maybe they just kind of, you know, predetermine that on their own. I'm not entirely sure. So this is actually really interesting to read because I'm kind of curious how that works from the game master point of view. So I'm going to have to ask my game master about that. But I like already, you know, the different kinds of attacks they can have here. Bite. The beetle creature bites an opponent with its strong mandibles. The bite inflicts 2d6 damage and the victim is injected with a paralyzing poison with potency 9. That sounds terrible. Surprise kick. The Beetle Kin suddenly delivers a hard kick to an opponent who is pushed D6 meters away and suffers an equal amount of bludgeoning damage. The victim is also knocked down. Acid Spit. The creature spits a gob of corrosive poison at an opponent within 10 meters, inflicting D8 damage. Armor has no effect, so armor is not going to help here. Oh, that is so... Oh my gosh, that's so interesting because we have a character that has like, I think, +6 or +8 armor right now. So it's really hard to get any damage on them. So if our game master uses this monster, like this will be a game changer for us, and that's going to be tough for that character to really like survive in that instance. And last but not least, Shattering Shriek. The Beetle Kin lets out a shriek so high-pitched it becomes inaudible. All victims within 10 meters become dazed and must make a willpower roll to resist fear. Awesome. So I don't see beetles very often in other kinds of games, and this is really cool. I love how creative they got with this to kind of make this feel like it's an actual beetle in the world of Dragonbane. All right, so next we got trolls. You can't have a fantasy game without having some sort of troll. Let's jump into Forest Troll and see what this is like. Again, we got the monster attacks here. Man, this stat block actually had a lot more than the Beetle Kin here. So we have Impulsive, Greedy, Sensitive to Sunlight. Okay, so this is kind of like NIGHTKIN a little bit, but obviously, you know, they're more of a troll than they are a NIGHTKIN. Regeneration. A Forest Troll automatically heals D6 hit points per turn in combat. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I know there are creatures like that in a game like Dungeons and Dragons. It's really interesting to see that show up here as a skill for a troll. Illusion. The Forest Troll can blend in with its surroundings. Overwhelming stench. Oh my god, they love getting gross with some of the creatures. They don't hold back on this. I love this. Forest Trolls reek of musty old forest and damp rotten wood. This is the best ways to detect them, but also means that anyone comes within 10 meters of a Forest Troll must make a Constitution roll, which is not an action, to avoid being dazed. Oh my god. So some of these creatures and monsters are actually like really tough to read about. I wonder, I'm sure like some of the monsters that we've encountered in our campaign are the same way as well too, but this is reading it like this it kind of gets me scared that, when they show up to actually fight them. So giants. So we have forest giants, mountain giants, sea giants, and Titan. Let's do Titan because Titan's always huge, right? All right, so ferocity is 2, size is huge, obviously. Movement is 14, armor is 6, hit points 64. Their attributes are hibernation. Once a Titan has completed a mission with its own satisfaction, withdraws to a remote location and goes back into hibernation until the next time it is called to battle. It then turns into stone, but wakes up if anyone attacks it or is summoned by the ancient cries of those who do battle with dragons and demons. It has resistance, which means that they can take half damage from non-magical attacks, so what you would expect when you hear resistance. They have a shield, which they can use to parry one attack, including ranged attacks, per round without spending the giant's own attacks. Roll against skill level 15. The shield has a durability of 24. That's a lot. Heavy footsteps. When a Titan moves, the ground shakes in a 10-meter radius. Anyone within that area must make a willpower roll to not get scared. Only one roll per combat is required. Okay, so it says required. So my guess is they're probably saying like total that you can do per combat. Otherwise, that's going to be, at a huge disadvantage for the players. But if you read it, like when it says is required, that makes it sound like you have to do it at least once and maybe more. And maybe that's what they intended for that. The different attacks: hammer blow, battering ram, out of the way. With the strong hand, the Titan pushes an opponent away. The victim is thrown 2d6 meters, suffers an equal amount of bludgeoning damage, and lands prone. That is huge. Ferocious shake, deafening roar, and earthquake. All right, so giants are pretty bad to deal with. We got beasts, so obviously this is where a lot of their characters going to fall under. Look at these here. We got basilisk, brook horse, Caledon, chimera, giant amoeba, giant octopus, giant spider, griffin, Medusa, Pegasus, rock. I don't know what rock is. Let's take a look at rock. Oh, okay. So this is a bird of some sort. Okay, cool. All right, so let's take a look at the random encounter. We haven't looked at some of these for the other beasts yet, so let's take a look at this. Traveling through the wilderness, the player character suddenly notices a huge bird of prey gliding across the sky. A little later, a dragon sweeps by as well, looking for its prey. These characters are about to witness something few people have ever seen: a rock and a dragon fighting for their lives. Before the monsters break off the fight and flee in opposite directions, the player characters see something drop from the bird's talons. What could it be? Oh, that's a really cool setup there. All right, so ferocity is 2, movement is 28, size is huge, hit points 80. Rocks from above. In combat, a rock usually starts by sweeping over its victims and dropping large rocks on them. Anyone within 10 meters must succeed an evade roll or take 2d6 bludgeoning damage. And then wings. The powerful wings of rock allowed to move freely through the air. So obviously it's an air creature here. So that is really interesting. I'd never heard of rock before, so I was just really curious what that said. All right, so number 7, undead. Now, I did look ahead at this section. I didn't look at the monsters yet, but I did want to call attention to everybody here because this is a very different aesthetic, right? Like the colors, at least. All the colors before kind of gives that red orange, tint feel to it. That fantasy of you're reading a book, the pages that's starting to age a little bit. But when you get to the undead, this is so great of them to think about, is that this gives off a sense of an undead creature because it's more gray in nature with the aesthetics and everything. So I absolutely love that they were really cognizant of how to make this different aesthetically. So from the undead, we have ghost, ghoul, living dead, mummy, skeleton, vampire, Wight, and will-o'-the-wisp. I don't know what Wight is. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let's take a read of this. The being known as the Wight, and again, if I'm saying this wrong, please let me know because I don't know. This is the first time I've seen this word before. This is by far the most hateful, murderous of the undead. Their entire existence is based on their hatred of all living things, and they usually spend hundreds and hundreds of years dreaming of revenge on the world that, in their minds, betrayed, wronged, and hurt them. Based on my studies, I would argue that most wights are bound to a specific location, often their own tomb or place of death, but I can also conclude that some manage to break free, which allows them to move freely through the world. Some of these immediately begin to pursue their dreams of revenge. Others are able to control their urges long enough to raise an entire army of undead, which they can command against any living creature that gets in their way. In conclusion, if life itself can be said to have a mortal enemy, the wight is most certainly a candidate for the position. Now, reading this, I already have in my mind that this is actually a really cool way to create an adventure around this. And I haven't read this adventure here, so I don't know if this is going to be the same thing or not. But imagining having your player start off in like some sort of catacomb, or at least that's like their first quest that they go on, and they accidentally wake up this wight to kind of get a sense of, of what this creature is going to be like, and then try to encourage the players to like leave from this and then learn a little bit more about a wight and learn that they typically stay in their place of burial, but sometimes they can escape. And then imagine like later on the adventure that they see and encounter this one again, no longer tied to their place of burial, and now they have an army that they're raising as well too. So that's just like a really cool adventure that you can really write up with this character. So resistance, they take half damage from non-magical weapons except fire, which inflicts normal damage, and then they usually have Morningstar and Chainmail. So that's really cool. Okay, so we have two other categories to get through in this video. Let's go ahead and hit dragons, and we're back to that same sort of aesthetic, but you can't have a game called Dragonbane that's based off of a game called Dragons and Demons without having dragons and demons, right? Let's take a look at Ancient Dragons, see what that's like. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I was looking for the dragon at first, and I was like, is this like a tiny dragon? Nope, it's just hiding, looks like a mountain right here. Oh my gosh, that's so great. I love that. Let's take a look at the, this one. All right, so you actually got a sneak peek of Lindworm there as well too. This one actually does not have a random encounter, and that makes sense because look at this. This has 108 hit points, armor of 8, movement 20. Like, this one is not a random encounter kind of creature. Like, this one has to be the main baddie of a quest or a campaign, right? But let's read the adventure seed here. The world is on the brink of total war. The demon prince, Beetle, I am sorry if I mispronounced that, is gathering his armies in the south, and all the peoples of the world must unite to resist the coming onslaught. But there may be a path to peace. Perhaps Belial can be defeated and driven off before the war breaks out. According to the Elven Elders, there is a creature that once defeated Belial and banished him to the demonic realm for hundreds of years, the dragon Nilfrung. The player character are sent to Nilfrung's cave on the edge of a lava lake deep in the bedrock, carrying priceless gifts to trade for information on how to banish Belial. Again, but there are, of course, forces that do not want the expedition to succeed. So the journey underground is lined with demon cultists and increasingly powerful demons. Not to mention brigands. Sorry, again, I haven't seen that word before either. Who have caught wind of the riches they carry. Will the characters make it to Nilfrung's cave? And if so, will they be able to convince the ancient dragon to join the fight against the demon prince? This is a really cool adventure seed that they wrote here, because it's one that you can like start to counter the dragon as like, you're trying to convince him, but it's, the dragon is reacting to it, and then you try to convince it to join your party to try to stop the actual big bad from taking over the world. So this is really cool. And again, dragons in the Dragonbane game are actually, they're still kind of neutral creatures, but in the lore, they're the ones that tends to be more on the order side of things, where demons tend to be more chaotic. So I think they do a pretty good job of explaining that they're not necessarily good in a sense. Like, they're not evil, they're not good, they're just neutral. But it sounds like they lean on more towards good. But again, this example kind of gives you like, it could go either way. So last but not least, demons. And let's do Guardian Demon, because you don't hear Guardian Demon too often. Guardian Angels, yes. Guardian Demon, no. Ferocity is 1, size is normal, movement is 14, armor 2, hit points 28. Okay, so these are not going to be a big bad necessarily unless you change some of these attributes here. They have a keen sense of smell, and they're coordinated. Their attacks are spear sweep, shield bash, paralyzing the spear thrust, impaling horns. Ooh, that's cool. Entangling rope, and teleportation. Oh, man. Oh, this actually sounds like a really interesting creature to have. So Guardian Demon sounds like this is more of a front line or a demon that you have to protect something that is sacred or important or valuable for demons. So when I heard a guardian demon, my first reaction is like, okay, it's like a guardian angel for someone, but is more of a demon. But this actually makes a little bit more sense that this is probably more like they are guards, literally, in that sense as well, too. So I really like that. So that is really cool. Well, I got to say, I'm really excited about the Bestiary that's coming out. I hope you're excited about this as well, too. If you haven't played Dragonbane, definitely give it a chance and check it out. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. It's an easy one to pick up. It's an easy one to play. But it's, just because it's easy doesn't mean that it's not fun or challenging or exciting. It is. It's just a lot more straightforward in a lot of these, and a lot of regards to like the attacks and movements and stuff like that. So, yeah, if there's any creature that you're excited about, let me know. I know for me, I would love to play an ogre or a hobgoblin because those races sound really interesting, really cool. But yeah, so I hope you're excited about this preview, and I'll catch you all later.